Welcome to another broadcast of iCan Media. I'm your host, Rob Hislop. We are coming to you this day from C-FER Technologies in East Edmonton. Joining us right now, Mark Stevens. Mark, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about C-FER before we get going as to what's behind us here.
Sure. C-FER is an applied research and development company. We're a subsidiary of the Alberta Innovators Technology Futures company. And we are dedicated to research and development in support of mainly the energy industry. I'm in the Pipelines and Structures division, and this facility is largely dedicated to experimental research focused on advancing pipeline technology.
So when you're talking about pipeline technology, is it just the pipeline itself that can transport the product in it, or are we looking at safety measures?
Well, I guess our focus is on anything related to how a pipeline is either designed, operated, maintained, or evaluated over its life cycle. And given that some pipelines carry stuff that is flammable and explosives, to the extent that you can manage the risk associated with things coming out of the pipeline, there is a distinct safety perspective associated with the work we do, as is an environmental protection angle as well. So the idea is we want to do research that improves the integrity and safety of pipelines for the betterment of everybody who has an interest in that happening.
So what is it you do here that's different from other testing facilities?
I guess what C-FER has always specialized in is trying to recreate real-world environments at effectively full scale. So you can do things on a bench in a lab at small scale, and then you have to make inferences or extrapolate how that might actually scale up. And our niche or specialty is to just do it as close to real as we can. So our equipment in this facility and the other facility that would be our home base has machines that will apply very big loads at very high pressures, at very low temperatures, again, to simulate the real world and the extremes associated with the real world to the extent that those are the conditions that make things fail.
Now, I'm standing here, and behind us we've got bags of dirt. Tell us what this is for and how it relates to this big green, for simplification purposes, box behind us.
You bet. So the trick with a pipeline, of course, is that people bury them in the ground to keep them out of harm's way, and the ground is usually dirt. So what this facility is trying to do is simulate the construction of a transmission pipeline, which would include digging a trench in the ground, putting the pipeline in and filling it back up with dirt, hence the dirt. We're also trying to simulate the process whereby technology vendors who are providing tools or systems that might detect leaks can install their sensing systems in the way that you'd install them when a pipeline is being constructed. So we're trying to simulate the process of installing a pipeline in the ground and the technologies that go along with it to monitor it. And then we basically close it up and use the equipment that you can see in the shiny silver wrappers to inject fluid through a test pipe that's buried in this tank to simulate leak events on a hydrocarbon liquid pipeline. And we've got control systems that let us do that in a very controlled and regulated way so that we can control the temperatures, the pressures on all the components and monitor how much is coming out, how quickly, and when that's happening. And the idea is this is a bed into which we can provide these simulated release events. A number of vendors will be participating in this research program to demonstrate what their technologies can or can't do in terms of being able to detect release events that happen at times that they are not aware of.
So when this is all set up, this green box behind us, it'll just be covered with dirt. Then that's all the average person would see because the pipeline is underneath it. The new technology is attached to the pipeline underneath as well.
Effectively, we fill the tank up halfway, we drop a pipe in, we lay out the sensing systems. They're not necessarily against the pipe, they're around the pipe. And then we cover it up with soil. And just like you said, if you walked around on top of this tank when we're ready to go, it just looks like a tank full of dirt. Just like if you walk across a pipeline right away, you don't really see anything because it's buried under the ground.
So what sort of sensing equipment will you be looking at here?
Well, I should point out that currently pipeline operating companies use a range of technologies for detecting whether or not a release event has happened. There's a new set of technologies that are being brought forward that are meant to complement the existing technologies. The idea is if you implement complementary technologies, the likelihood of those systems detecting a release event goes up. And the kind of technologies that we're exploring they kind of fall in the family of distributed external leak detection technologies. Basically sensors that run parallel along the length of the pipeline along the entire length of the pipeline, and they have systems in place that let them detect what's going on. And the systems fall in kind of three categories. There's something called a vapor sensing tube, which is a permeable tube buried in the ground. In the event that hydrocarbon liquid comes out of the pipe, some of that liquid vaporizes, it permeates through the soil. It also permeates through the tubes that are running along the side of the pipeline. And effectively, the technologies sniff that vapor to see if they sense hydrocarbons in trace amounts, and that would be an indication of a leak. So that would be the vapor sensing tube side of things. Then there's hydrocarbon sensing cables. It's basically an electrical cable, again, running along the length of the pipeline, and its resistive properties change when it comes in contact with a hydrocarbon liquid. And the third class of technologies that we're looking at ride on top of fiber optic cables, and effectively they send light signals up and down these fiber optic cables, and the information that comes back to their interrogator units enables them to infer temperature changes around the fiber optic cables, or to effectively hear sounds. So they're listening for or sensing temperature changes.
So how do you see this changing then as far as pipeline safety goes in the future?
Well, this is, again, a different complementary technology to improve the likelihood that small leak events, if they happen, will be detected quickly, and also help operators determine exactly where those leak events happen. Because, I mean, some release events, in the event of a pipeline rupture, it's not hard to figure out that that happened, nor is it hard to figure out where that might have happened. But small leak events are more difficult to detect and locate. And these technologies are directed towards detecting the really small, slow release events that can accumulate over time.
When you're looking at something here, how long might it take before the technology is actually put out into the field?
Well, many of the technologies that we're evaluating are effectively ready to go. They are commercially available, and it is an opportunity for the vendors of those technologies to demonstrate to the project sponsors how well those systems actually work.
Okay, so this is something that, say, Enbridge or TransCanada comes here to test out equipment to see if it's suitable for their purposes then.
Exactly, and just backing up a little bit. So this project is what we call a joint industry research program. It's funded primarily by operating companies, namely Enbridge and TransCanada. We have additional support coming in from actually two levels of government. Both the province and the federal government have provided grants to supplement the funding for this program so that we can do more and do it more quickly. But the primary drivers are Enbridge and TransCanada, and it's to do exactly what you said, which is to provide an opportunity for vendors to demonstrate how well their technologies work.
When you, and maybe because you're a testing facility, you're not in a position to say this, but when you look at the technology that's coming out there as far as leak detection goes with pipelines, is it something that people can look at and feel, I guess, a little bit more satisfied with the work that's being done by oil companies to try and protect the environment through this sort of equipment? Can you see where down the road the leaks will be even fewer, problems will be even fewer as well because of the technology that's coming out?
I think it's fair to say that the public doesn't like to see oil on the ground, and certainly the pipeline operating companies don't like to see that. So they are working hard to develop technologies to make the likelihood and the severity of those events when they happen less. And this technology is exactly intended to do that. Provides another means of sensing when things go wrong, increase the likelihood that they'll find it, and increase the likelihood that they'll find it quickly. The quicker you can detect something like a small leak, the quicker you can shut it in and deal with it.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time, Mark.
You bet. Thank you.
We've been chatting with Mark Stevens from C-FER Technologies here on ICANN Media.